After the last several videos of me just playing absolutely terrible Pokemon like Arbok and Weezing and the Raticates, let's finally play something good. How fast can we beat Pokemon Moon using the Raichus, Cantonian Raichu and Alolan Raichu? Let's get straight into the video. Both of these Pokemon are similar in some ways, but very different in other ways, including the way I'm going to be playing these Pokemon. We'll be starting off with the Cantonian Raichu. As we talk about our moves and our level up, we can pretty much just rush straight to the Raticate and the Holofights. Both of these Pokemon are going to have excellent early games. You want to know why I say that? Well, you see, we got to take a look at the stats first. Raichu has 60 HP, 90 attack, 55 defense, which is not that great considering we're weak to ground type moves, 90 special attack, 80 special defense, and 110 speed. And if we take a quick look over at Alolan Raichu's stats, they're essentially identical, just take out 5 attack and 5 defense and add it to the special attack and the special defense. Their HP and speed are the exact same. And 110 speed in the medium-fast level up group should be enough to where neither of these Pokemon will need a plus speed nature. However, it doesn't exactly turn out like that, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Starting off with the Kanto Raichu's level up set, we only get 4 moves since it's a stone evolution. We get Thunder Shock, Tail Whip, Quick Attack, and Thunderbolt. You hardly ever get to see Thunderbolt in a Gen 7 solo run, because the TM for Thunderbolt is not accessible until the post game. But you can get Thunder or Charge Beam if you need to. But speaking of which, what kind of TMs do we get? Some of the TMs we get include Hidden Power, Hyper Beam, Thunder, Return, Brick Break, Facade, Thief, Round, Echoed Voice, Focus Blast, Fling, Charge Beam, Giga Impact, Volt Switch, Grass Knot, and Wild Charge. Alolan Raichu's level up set is technically different, but also completely identical. We only start with Thunder Shock, Tail Whip, Quick Attack, and Thunderbolt. However though, with a heart scale, we could get Psychic or Speed Swap. However, Speed Swap is not a good move, and we can just get the TM for Psychic later, so it's not really that big of a deal. But honestly, the biggest difference with Alolan Raichu does come down to its TMs. Like I mentioned earlier, there is Psychic. This thing also gets access to Psyshock and Calm Mind. So we're going to get just about all the coverage regular Raichu has, plus Psychic moves. Inside of the Verdant Cavern with Cantonian Raichu, I'm going to pick up the TM for Brick Break. Using it on the Alolan Raticate does make it barely survive thanks to its defense boost. However, it wouldn't be a big deal, I can just knock it out with Thunderbolt, but unfortunately, thanks to some pretty bad damage, I end up getting a quick blackout here. Thankfully, just one though. And now, let's go take on Hala. Hala leads off with his Mankey. I'm going to use Thunderbolt. It barely survives, which is kind of surprising. Then again, I am only level 15. Next up is the Makuhita. After a Fake Out, I can knock it out with 2 Thunderbolts. Last up is Crab Brawler. It is unfortunately not a water typing, so Thunderbolt doesn't do too much to it. And I do end up taking another Blackout. The reason I decided to take the Blackout was because I forgot to save. And also, level 15 is not a good level to be taking on Hala. I just thought the experience would have been worth it, but clearly it wasn't, so I'm going to fight some trainers on my way back. I go back to the Holofight at level 16 with an Oran Berry. The Oran Berry will give me an extra 10 HP, and I do hope the 10 HP matters because the Crab Brawler will be guaranteed to use its Z move, and when it does go for its Z move, unfortunately it still knocks me out, so I decide to take a reset. On my third reset, when I do get to the Crab Brawler, I am able to survive the Z move simply just because I made sure to have extra health leaving the Mankey and the Makuhita. And thankfully because of the extra health, I'm able to defeat Hala with a time of 23 minutes and 7 seconds. With the Alolan Raichu, when I do get to the Raticate, I go for Brick Break and I actually one-shot. I actually was not expecting the one-shot there. Maybe the reason I didn't get that one shot with Raichu with Brick Break was simply because I went with a minus attack nature while with Alolan Raichu I didn't. And while I make my way to Hala with this Pokemon as well, I'm going to go over the abilities, natures, and hidden powers of Alolan Raichu, then Cantonian Raichu. For the Alolan Raichu, we're going with Surge Surfer. This doubles speed on electric terrain. We're never going to use access to this ability, so it's just useless. Our hidden power typing will be Hidden Power Bug. This will help with Psychic type coverage and for SOS training if needed. Our nature is going to be timid for extra speed and less physical attack. In most instances, we're not really going to be using our physical attack, although having a minus attack nature definitely wasn't the most useful for Raticate, but I was still able to get a knockout surprisingly. The Cantonian Raichu will be running a modest nature for extra special attack and less physical attack, and our hidden power typing with that Pokemon will be Hidden Power Ice, and our ability is Lightning Rod. It'll give us an immunity to electric type moves. Hala is going to be even easier with this thing because even though the moveset is identical, we have a tiny bit extra special attack and we resist fighting moves. And because of us resisting fighting moves, Hala is not willing to go for his Z move and is just going to spam Pursuit, which is way more tolerable, even though I'm pretty sure his Z move would do more damage. And Alolan Raichu defeats Hala with a time of 20 minutes and 42 seconds. This early island split has definitely been determined by Hala pretty much. Raichu had a way slower Hala simply just because it was neutral to the fighting moves and was getting hit with all-out plummeting. Alolan Raichu though is able to pull out with an early lead. But the question is, can we keep up this early lead on the second island? I think we can, but here's the thing, our moveset is still going to be very identical to Cantonian Raichu because we can't get Psychic until after we're done with the second island. So why don't we go ahead and continue with Alolan Raichu and see how we do on Akala Island. I know this video is going a bit quicker than usual, but we're actually playing with very good, very similar Pokemon, so it's kind of to be expected. Before leaving Melee Island, I picked myself up the Expert Belt and the Shell Bell. We're not going to be going leftovers today because this is a pretty good Pokemon, we're not going to need it. After I defeat Sina's Ice types, I can defeat the rival in Panayola Town and get myself the TM for Hidden Power in the Pokemon Nursery. It's not going to be too useful as of right now, but coming up, we're going to get access to another great move and a very easy totem fight. We can actually, after the Gladion fight, pick up this TM by Brookett Hill, which is Charge Beam. This will have a 70% chance of boosting our special attack by 1 stage, and it does pretty okay damage. However, 90 accuracy is pretty annoying. But you gotta do what you gotta do until you get Calm Mind, and you may be wondering, where's Calm Mind? It's all the way on the 4th island in the Pawnee Island Pokemon Mart. It's essentially the same spot you buy like Thunder, Blizzard, and Focus Blast. No need to play an intro for Wishy-Washy today for pretty obvious reasons. At the Well of Volcano, I'm gonna go ahead and just start doing training on the Marowaks. I'm not that good of a level right now. I'm going to want level 28 in order to deal with Lurantis, because on the Lurantis, I'm going to be using the Expert Belt and two-shotting it with Hidden Power Bug, so I'm going to need to stay here for a little bit. I'll occasionally take some blackouts during the process. I hold the Shell Bell while doing this just to last as long as I can, and by the time I reach level 26, I end up thinking, you know what, I'm pretty confident I'll get level 28 for Lurantis, so why don't we go ahead and play the intro for Salazzle. The reason I'm going to be playing Salazzle's intro is because during this fight, it gets a special defense boost, and obviously that's not great when we're spamming special moves. However, on the very first attempt, despite me getting Toxiced, I am able to knock out the Salazzle, but unfortunately, the Salandit is able to knock me out thanks to me being poisoned, so I'm going to take that blackout and keep the XP. And the Speed EVs too, those are always helpful. On my second attempt against this fire trial, I am not able to get poisoned and I can actually win on the second try. Inside of the lush jungle in preparation for the grass trial, by the time I defeat the Fomantis, I'm able to level up to level 28. This is the level, as I mentioned earlier, that we are going to need for the Lurantis. Against the Totem Lurantis, I am able to outspeed it thanks to Raichu having very good speed. I do about half with Hidden Power Bug with the Expert Belt, and Solar Blade does about 2/3. However, unfortunately, since my special attack EVs aren't that great, it is a 2-shot range. It's very favorable on our side, but pretty much on the first attempt, the range doesn't go according to plan. It takes me a total of 3 attempts to actually beat this trial. With the 3 trials defeated, before we can take on Olivia the Island Kahuna, I stop in Coney City and I actually go to the incense shop. I'm going to be purchasing myself the odd incense. This will boost the power of Psychic type moves by 20%. We'll be making good use of this in just a little bit. However though, we're going to have to take on Olivia with Thunderbolt, and in previous games, you would not want to use Thunderbolt on the Rock type specialist because they have ground types. However though, Olivia in this game does not have any ground types. The only ground type she has is the Probopass in the league, and that's pretty much it. Something that's also been making these runs go relatively quickly is I've had to teach very few moves via TM or by level up. It just has what it needs early on. So now let's go fight Olivia. Thankfully, starting in Generation 6, electric types are immune to paralysis, so I can set up as many charge beams as I want on the nose pass relatively risk-free. Next up is the Lycanroc. It's a one-shot with Thunderbolt, and then obviously the Boldore is going to be a two-shot thanks to Sturdy, and then I can defeat Olivia with a time of 50 minutes and 22 seconds. That is an extraordinarily fast Olivia split. This thing is definitely going to get a great result. Unfortunately for Cantonian Raichu, it is still behind the Alolan version at the Hala split, so hopefully it can make up for it on the second island. There is one different thing I do with Cantonian Raichu on Melee Island. I pick up the Expert Bell, I also pick up the Shell Bell, and the TM for Echoed Voice. We're going to be using Echoed Voice for a specific fight coming up shortly. The Wishy-Washy is an absolute joke. I enter the Thrifty Mega Mart, I don't get rest, I just stock up on repels. Believe it or not, our strategy while we fight these Marowaks is the exact same as Alolan Raichu's. We need level 28 with Expert Belt for the Lurantis to two-shot with Hidden Power. Although, we're using Hidden Power Ice instead of Hidden Power Bug. The reason we're using Hidden Power Ice is because we need a move to deal with Hapu's Flygon. The Alolan Raichu doesn't have to worry about the Flygon because it will have access to Stab Psychic. Cantonian Raichu needs a different option, and that option is Hidden Power Ice. It'll do the exact same damage on the Lurantis anyway. The one opportunity that Raichu has at this point to catch up to its Alolan counterpart is by getting no resets on the Salazzle Totem fight. And I do get poisoned by the Salazzle, and I was very worried I was going to have to do a blackout, but surprisingly, at very low health, I am still able to win. So yeah, first trying this, that'll help a lot. I fight a bunch of the trainers surrounding the lush jungle, and I can get myself level 28 after knocking out the Shiinotic. If you're playing Pokemon Sun, that would be a Parasect. Fun little fact for those of you who care. My special attack EVs aren't the best here either. If I had around 64 special attack EVs or so, I can get the two-shot guaranteed. Without it, it'll be a range. Hopefully I can get the range right away. And on my first attempt, it does look like I might get that range. Fortunately, I do. But the one problem that Cantonian Raichu has is it's not as fast because of the fact that Alolan Raichu went with a plus speed nature, while the Cantonian one did not. But that's fine though, I'm able to knock out the Lurantis and not knock out the cast form. I actually missed 2 charge beams because I ran out of Thunderbolts. That was the reason I got that loss. That was pretty stupid. Thankfully that doesn't happen again. And before I fight Olivia, I fight some more of the local trainers. I fight this guy's Gyarados. He has really good XP yields, and right next to the fisherman is a black belt with a Hariyama. I need to not fight this guy. That thing's Hariyama is so powerful. I actually get a loss on it, so yeah, I need to remember, don't fight that thing. Anyway, let's go take on Olivia now. The strat here is basically identical to the Alolan Raichu. Just use some charge beams and spam Thunderbolt. However, on my first attempt, the Lycanroc barely survives. I must not have gotten a special attack boost with charge beam. So yeah, let's fix that for the next attempt, shall we? The exact same thing happened again. I looked back at the footage, I was at +1 for this Lycanroc. It's supposed to KO, but for the second time, it lived at what looks like 1 or 2 hit points. This is not going great for the Cantonian Raichu. All that time gain I had during the fire trial is essentially being wiped out at this point. I do end up going back into the fight with Grass Knot and the Expert Belt. I picked up the Grass Knot TM in the lush jungle. Hopefully this will help the Lycanroc be a one-shot at +1. Thankfully it does. I should have just done that in the first place, but I do get a time of 52 minutes and 59 seconds. Not a bad Olivia split, but it could have been way better. While it may look like the Cantonian Raichu has narrowed its deficit by just a tiny bit, the Alolan Raichu is still ahead by a similar margin as it was in the first island. It's going to get worse from here, I think, because pretty soon, Alolan Raichu is going to get access to one of its most powerful moves, Psychic. while Cantonian Raichu has to stick to Thunderbolt and Charge Beam, so I do worry this gap is going to get worse. However though, there is going to be some problems that Alolan Raichu has to deal with later that the Cantonian one does not, such as one example, having a weakness to Bug, Ghost, and Dark type moves. Cantonian Raichu will not have those weaknesses, so it'll be interesting to see how the Guzma fights, the Ghost Trial, and the Nanu fight go. But before we talk about those, let's stick to Cantonian Raichu for a bit. I go through all the Aether Paradise tutorial stuff, nobody cares about it, and I do lose to Hala here. It's no fair that his Alolan Raichu will have Psychic, but when I fight him with my own Alolan Raichu, I'm not going to have Psychic because I get the TM for Psychic just before this fight and there's no time to teach it. I clear out some of the trainers on Route 10 and take a bus out to Mount Hakanali in the observatory. Before I fight Mullane, I'm going to be purchasing some vitamins right away. And today's vitamin of the day is 3 Carbos and 5 Calcium. I could buy some other vitamins, and I do, so I decided to buy 5 Iron. I'm going to be doing this because I need to max out my speed, obviously get as much special attack as possible, and get a little bit of extra defense on the side. You may be wondering what EVs Cantonian Raichu needs by the end of the game. It honestly doesn't really need much of anything. Because of the fact we'll have access to Charge Beam and our speed will be more than enough, it's not really a big deal. We can just stick to vitamins and that's pretty much it. The Mullane fight does take me 2 tries though, simply just because his steel types are very defensive. And before I take on the Vikavolt, just remember, I am going to be immune to electric type moves because of Lightning Rod. I'm also going to fly back to the Hollow Grand Resort, talk to this guy right here, and get myself an item I almost never use, the Metronome. You may be wondering why I need to use this. It's going to be a strat unique specifically to Cantonian Raichu since it's not going to have the Psychic TM. Against the Vikavolt, right away I start spamming Echoed Voice. I'm going to be using Echoed Voice with the Metronome. How the Metronome works is whenever I use the move multiple times in a row, it gets a 20% boost each time up to a maximum boost of 100%. However, the first battle doesn't go so well because turn 1 the Vikavolt used Charge. That boosts the special defense by 1 stage. Obviously that's not going to go too well. I would prefer it to go for Bug Bite turn 1. On the second attempt, even though the Vikavolt does end up using Charge, I'm actually able to surprisingly knock it out, and all that's left is pretty much the Charge-a-Bug. However, because of getting hit by Strength Shot from that thing, which lowers your speed by 2 in this game, I end up getting undersped by it, and I get another loss. It takes Raichu until 12 blackouts and 4 resets into the run to finally defeat the Vikavolt trial. That should not have been that hard, but oh well. The Cantonian Raichu is probably going to have an easier time than the Alolan one because the Alolan one is going to be weak to Bug Bite. Before I leave the mountain, I get the Comet Shard that I couldn't use to sell for vitamins earlier since I had to get vitamins before the Mullane fight. I'll use that Comet Shard and buy a couple more Calciums. On the first Guzma fight, I should have the Protect TM to block First Impression. However, since Golisopod is part water, Raichu can just one-shot both of his Pokemon with Thunderbolt, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. Although, I should go get Protect for the final one, because that final Guzma fight can be difficult sometimes. With the Electric type trial also finished, I can equip the Z Crystal and fight a bunch of trainers in the area in preparation for the Mimikyu. I want to be level 38 for the Mimikyu if I can. I'm gonna fight this Ace Trainer first with the Sandshrew and the Marowak. I go for Gigavolt Havoc on the Marowak, and believe it or not, that Marowak actually has Lightning Rod. I had no idea this thing had Lightning Rod. All the Marowaks in the Fire Trial all had Cursed Bodies, so that's just what I assumed. And because of that lack of knowledge, I end up getting a blackout to that trainer. I'm gonna have to teach that guy a very specific move later just to take care of him. Probably Thief or something, which I don't even think I backtracked for. I may have to backtrack for Thief to fight that guy. That is something I'll need to consider for all future electric types. I do backtrack for Thief, come back and get some revenge on that Ace Trainer. And now, I feel we're ready to take on the Ghost type trial with Mimikyu. I'm not really sure what to expect here. My moveset going into this fight is Thunderbolt, Charge Beam, Hidden Power, Ice, and Thief, and I'm holding the Electrium Z. What I'm going to do turn 1 is use Charge Beam to break the disguise and hopefully get a special attack boost, which I do. And because of that electric type boost, I can now use Gigavolt Havoc based on the power of Thunderbolt. This will be enough to one-shot the Mimikyu. The Haunter avoids putting me to sleep with Hypnosis as I knock it out with a single Thunderbolt. I fight most of the trainers on my way to Po Town. I do get a blackout on this scientist Alolan Muck, and I also get a blackout on Guzma. This was simply just because First Impression did way too much damage. I should have gotten Protect. I don't know what I was thinking with this run. I think from now on with most Pokemon, I should just buy Protect by default unless I resist bug moves. And with all of the events of Ula Ula Island finished, let's go wrap things up and take on Nanu. Nanu is going to lead off with Sableye. I'm going to have Thunderbolt, Thief, Hidden Power, and Charge Beam. Same moveset as the Mimikyu, by the way. I'm holding the Adrenaline Orb as well for when the Krokorok comes out, because without the Adrenaline Orb speed boost, I will not be able to outspeed the Persian. The plan is just to use Charge Beams on the Sableye, try my best to build up my special attack, and then when the Persian comes out, hopefully if I don't die to Fake Out, I can one-shot it with Thunderbolt. And thankfully right away, it does not go for Fake Out. It was probably going to go for the Z move. I'm able to defeat Nanu with a time of 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 22 seconds. Pretty dang good. Check this out, guys. After Hao completely kicks my ass, I can finally teach myself the TM for Psychic. Having Thunderbolt, Psychic, and Charge Beam, along with Brick Break for coverage, is going to be extraordinarily good for Raichu. However, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be having problems against Bug, Ghost, and Dark-type moves, which all 3 of those can be found in plentiful amounts on this island. Starting with Bug, there's going to be a Bug-type move in the Electric Trial, so how's that going to go? On top of Mount Hakanali, I'm going to pretty much just buy only Calcium and Carbos. I'm not going to be taking on Vikavolt just yet. The reason is because remember how I mentioned Ghost types were going to be bad? I need level 41 for Mimikyu, and I need specifically 133 speed. Not 133 speed EVs, but 133 raw speed. This was the reason I went with a plus speed nature. Alolan Raichu cannot afford to have the Mimikyu outspeed, but the Cantonian Raichu, it's not that big of a deal. So what I'm going to do is, before I take on the Vikavolt, I'm going to go back and forth on Route 10 and fight a bunch of Fearos in the tree. Each Fearow gives 2 speed EVs, and while it's technically slower for EV training than SOS chaining Zubats, for raw experience, it's going to be better doing it this way. And besides, I don't need too much speed, I just need around 128 speed EVs or so by the time I get to the Mimikyu. So fighting the Fearos is a win-win here. On the Totem Vikavolt, I'm going into the fight with Psychic and the Odd Incense. My first Psychic does less than half. That's pretty concerning. I go ahead and use a second Psychic to hopefully get a high roll or something, and it does end up living and knocking me out with Bug Bite. That definitely is worrying. That may have just been because I was level 37 when I could be level 38 over a damage rounding threshold, so I fight a bunch of the local trainers, get to level 38 and try again. At level 38, Psychic with the Odd Incense is able to get the 2-shot on the Vikavolt, and then I can use Psychic for the Charge-a-Bug. Thankfully, I was still able to outspeed it. Against the first Guzma fight, I do not forget to teach Protect. Then I can defeat the Golisopod with a Gigavolt Havoc. Then on the Ariados, I actually forgot that thing has Sucker Punch. It's gonna hurt really bad. The correct play here was just to knock out the Golisopod and the Ariados with just 1 Thunderbolt each. There was no reason to go for any Z moves. By the time I enter the Ghost type trial and take on the Mimikyu, I'm only level 40, so I do use 1 rare candy to get to level 41. This will get me 133 speed, 1 speed faster than the Mimikyu. However though, while I break its disguise, I will still need a turn 1 Mimic. You may be wondering, if I need a turn 1 Mimic, why aim for the outspeed anyway? If I underspeed, I would need 2 opportunities, but if I outspeed, I only need 1. The Mimikyu always has a chance to go for turn 1 Mimic if it detects that none of its moves can one-shot me. It only takes me 2 tries to defeat the Mimikyu though. I'm able to get a Charge Beam special attack boost and it just used turn 1 Mimic. So yeah, pretty easy. In the Ula Ula Meadows, before making my way to Po Town, I actually make a quick little detour to the Lake of the Moon. I'm actually going to pick myself up the TM for Psyshock. A lot of the threats in the late game are very specially defensive, so using Psyshock for some fights will actually be better than Psychic. There are some fights where I may have to use both. I don't have any resets or blackouts to the second Guzma fight, and before I take on Nanu, I'm going to be having the Adrenaline Orb, with my moves being Thunderbolt, Charge Beam, Psychic, and Protect. Even though I have Hidden Power Bug, Stab Thunderbolt is just going to be way better. Wait, actually, that moveset won't work. I need to have something for the Krokorok, so before I actually fight Nanu, I realized my notes were wrong, so I do teach Hidden Power Bug. This does allow me to knock out the Krokorok and get a time of 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 42 seconds. I'm sure you guys still aren't surprised, but Alolan Raichu is still ahead by around 2 to 3 minutes. Cantonian Raichu just really hasn't had a chance to catch up. It just kept falling behind, and it had opportunities to catch up, but it just got resets in similar spots that the Alolan version did. But sadly, when we get to the final island, Alolan Raichu is going to do even better because it's going to get access to Calm Mind. Plus, the movesets are going to get very similar as well, especially since they'll both most likely get Focus Blast, or as I like to call it, Focus Miss. Anyway, let's continue on with Alolan Raichu. I don't have any resets or blackouts during the entire Aether Paradise section with all those trainer fights, including the final Guzma in the first Lusamine battles. And on Pawnee Island, as we fight a bunch of the local trainers, we only need to be level 53 with Alolan Raichu for Hapu. However, we are going to need some moves. We're going to be using Thunderbolt, Calm Mind, Grass Knot, and Psychic. So you know what? Since Pawnee Island up until Hapu is usually just training on trainers and training on wild Pokemon anyway just to get to the right level, let's just rush straight to the Hapu fight. These Pokemon are already pretty good, and the video's going pretty fast. We may as well keep up the pace. Hapu leads off with a Alolan Dugtrio. I go ahead and set up some Calm Minds as it tries to spam Sucker Punch on me. Because it knows I'm holding an air balloon and it can't use Earthquake, it's going to be trying to use Sucker Punch to break the air balloon because I do resist Iron Head. So I'm able to set up as much as I want, and with all the setup, I can one-shot the Mudstale with Grass Knot, and I can one-shot the Flygon with Grass Knot, as well as the Gastrodon. Normally the Gastrodon does not like going down with that move because it is pretty light. However, with all those Calm Minds, of course it's going to one-shot. Inside of the Pawnee Canyon, while I fight a bunch of the trainers, the level I need for Lusamine is not that bad. You gotta remember, I've already used one rare candy, so there's technically only 11 other rare candies for me to work with. I need to rare candy to be level 68 for the final Lusamine fight. This will ensure I get to Professor Kukui at a minimum level of level 70. We don't need that high of a level for the Raichu, and with 11 rare candies, we only need to train up to level 57. We may have to train to 58 if I decide to skip one of the rare candies. However, it's not really a good idea to skip one of the rare candies, even the ones that do take backtracking. I get no resets or blackouts during the entirety of the vast Pawnee Canyon, and at the very end where I have to fight the Totem Komodo, I'm able to get to level 58, then I can use 8 of my rare candies. This will get me to level 66. I don't know why I decided to get 66 instead of 68. Maybe I forgot to get some of the candies, which I actually did. As soon as I went through all this dialogue with Hapu and Lily, I immediately fly to get the remaining 2 rare candies to get level 68. Fun fact, if you let this cutscene play, you will be able to fly back to the Altar of the Moon, and you can actually come back here a lot quicker. So sometimes it's worth doing that first, or you can just push the boulder that's in the vast Pawnee Canyon, which allows you to get back to the start pretty quickly. That's also a pretty decent way to quickly get back here. I enter the Ultra Space Wilds, save before Lusamine with a split of 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 28 seconds. Cantonian Raichu also gets no resets and no blackouts during the entire Aether Paradise section. Something that's a little bit unfortunate is for Hapu with Cantonian Raichu, we're going to need level 55 instead of level 53. This is because of the fact we don't have access to Calm Mind, and we can't exactly use Charge Beam on any of our Pokemon, so we're going to have to rely on raw power. The one thing I do to help get levels quicker is there is this one dancer on this route with 4 Oricorios. They all hold focus sashes as well. She's known as this place's quote-unquote root kahuna. If you defeat her Pokemon, she'll give you a focus sash. However, I am not going to defeat her. I'm going to let her final one knock me out. Oricorios have very good experience yields, and if I defeat the first 3 then lose to the 4th, I can easily get around 3300 XP per battle, which is pretty efficient despite the lack of no trainer boosted experience points. You know, if trainer boosted XP was still a thing in this, I could probably get close to 4500 or maybe even 5000 experience per blackout. It'd be very dang efficient. Once all of the training is done, I can start Hapu at level 55. I'm going to one-shot the Dugtrio with Focus Blast. Then next up is the Mudsdale. I'm going to one-shot it with Grass Knot. Then the Flygon comes out, I'll use Hidden Power Ice. And then last up is the Gastrodon. Grass Knot is not going to do enough because of its lightweight, so I'm going to turn it into Bloom Doom, which will allow it to one-shot. And I do defeat Hapu with a pretty decent split. But remember, it's not at Hapu where we do the split here. In the Vast Pawnee Canyon, the level I need for Lusamine is going to be level 69. The reason I need 69 is because I only need level 70 for Kukui, and 69 for Lusamine is mainly just to be generous. However, 68 will work as well if we can't get to 69. During the Vast Pawnee Canyon, I only get one blackout, and that is on the final Veteran Eric. He is pretty difficult sometimes, but only one blackout for the whole canyon isn't that bad. Although I am still not able to catch up with Alolan Raichu at this point. I just defeat the Komodo after using my candies to get level 68. I enter the Ultra Space Wilds and save before Lusamine with a real time of 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 1 second. So now, there is essentially a 4-minute gap in between these Pokemon. The Cantonian Raichu just has not been able to catch up at all. It was probably because I had to do extra training for Hapu, because if I was level 53 instead of 55, the Dugtrio would probably not have been a one-shot with Focus Blast, or the Mudsdale wouldn't have been a one-shot with Grass Knot. I don't exactly remember the ranges. I made the notes a while ago. I always put the notes on my paste link in the description if anyone wants to look at them. The reason I don't have Paste Spin is because at some point my old account was just randomly banned for no reason. I don't know why. But anyway, it's looking more and more clear that the Alolan Raichu is going to beat Cantonian Raichu. But let's still go over the final 8 fights anyway. We'll start with Cantonian Raichu at Lusamine. One disadvantage the Cantonian Raichu will have at the Lusamine fight is Clefable is very defensive in the special department, and we don't have any setup moves. I could have taught Charge Beam, but I think I forgot to teach it, so I'm just spamming Thunderbolt, just hoping for the best. It also doesn't help that the Clefable has Moonlight, and once I realize this, I quickly reset and come back into the fight with Charge Beam. With access to Charge Beam, I'm able to set up on the Clefable and just sweep the rest of her team very easily. For the Alolan Raichu, I'm just going to stack up Calm Minds on the Clefable. If the Clefable does go for Moonblast, it will have a 30% chance on lowering my special attack just to be annoying. But thankfully that doesn't happen, and I can just sweep the rest of her Pokemon with Thunderbolt and Psychic. Gladion is next. The Crobat will be a one-shot with Thunderbolt, and the Silvally is going to be a 2-hit. It is very defensive. Last up is the Lucario and the Weavile. The Lucario will be a one-hit with Focus Blast, as is the Weavile. I have to hope it doesn't miss though. I did get a miss on the Lucario, and I was pretty worried I was going to die. Thankfully, I don't have any hail here. I believe it was at this point where I realized if I set my game time to starting at midnight at the start of the game, there will not be a blizzard here. So I think I finally got that into my brain. It's not like it would have mattered for the Alolan Raichu anyway. I had to play in the daytime specifically for the air balloon. I can just set up Calm Minds on the Crobat. However, Alolan Raichu does have one unfortunate setback here. I actually get a Focus Blast miss on the Weavile, allowing it to knock me out from above half health with Night Slash. You may be wondering why I originally took damage from. It was from the Silvally using X-Scissor. I do defeat Gladion on the second try though. Back to Cantonian Raichu. At the How fight, it's essentially a Raichu versus Raichu counterpart. I'm going to use some Charge Beams on the Alolan Raichu, and unfortunately due to some bad luck with a mix of misses and special attack just not getting boosted, I do unfortunately get a blackout here. Once I take down the Raichu, I'm going to use Gigavolt Havoc on the Flareon. Flareon has extraordinarily good special defense, which was the reason I needed to use a Z move. The rest of his Pokemon are pretty easy to take down as well with Thunderbolt. For Alolan Raichu, just replace the move Charge Beam with Calm Mind, and replace the one reset with no resets because Alolan Raichu is pretty dang good. Now, we just gotta take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. For Cantonian Raichu, the first Elite Four member I take on is Kahili. She leads off with Skarmory, I go for Charge Beam, and unfortunately, I do miss right away. That's annoying. Thankfully, I do hit the next one. My plan is just to build up my special attack on the Skarmory while it pretty much only has Steel Wing for damage. As soon as I defeat it, the Oricorio is a one-shot with Thunderbolt. The Crobat does not outspeed me this time. Very rare when that's the case. The Mandibuzz is a one-hit, and the Toucannon goes down as well, even though it does try to charge up a Flame Beak. For Alolan Raichu though, the first Elite Four member is not Kahili, it is going to be Hala. So let's go on over to Hala. Hala leads off with Hariyama. I have both Psychic and Psyshock for this fight. With the Odd Incense, I don't need to do any setup. I just mix and match between Psychic and Psyshock depending on which has more defense or which has more special defense. Both of these Pokemon are going to go in different paths. The second Elite Four member Alolan Raichu takes on is Kahili, so let's stick around. On the Skarmory, I go for one Calm Mind and knock it out with Thunderbolt. When the Mandibuzz comes out, I will use the Electrium Z to use Gigavolt Havoc to guarantee the one-shot. I do outspeed the Crobat as well, which thankfully both of our contenders do, and I can just sweep the rest of Kahili's Pokemon with Thunderbolt. Going back to Cantonian Raichu, the second Elite Four member it takes on is Acerola, the Ghost-type specialist. I go into this fight with a Person Berry, Thunderbolt, Charge Beam, Grass Knot, and Hidden Power. Just set up some Charge Beams and sweep with Thunderbolt. The reason I have a Person Berry is because the Sableye loves going for Confuse Ray, and I've had quite a few runs in the past where that Sableye has made me hit myself so many times, even though the chance to hit yourself is only 33% starting in Gen 7. I didn't want to take that chance, so I equipped a Person Berry that I found on one of the berry trees on Melee Island. And thankfully, I don't get permanently confused, and I can sweep the rest of her team with a mix of Thunderbolt and Hidden Power Ice. Let's continue on with Hala. I fight Hala third. Both of our contenders will save Olivia for last. My plan is to use one Charge Beam on the Hariyama and try my best to just sweep his team with Thunderbolt. The first battle didn't go too well, simply just because I never got the special attack boost, and as soon as I get the Charge Beam, I'm going to use Gigavolt Havoc on the Hariyama. The Hariyama is the most special defensive Pokemon on his entire team, and with that thing down, the rest of his Pokemon are all one-shots to Thunderbolt, especially the Poliwrath. I'm sure I didn't have to say that. Going back to Alolan Raichu on Acerola, whom was fought third, I can just set up some Calm Minds. I don't bother holding a Person Berry, I probably should have for safety, and I can just set up and just sweep. I hope you can all see the pattern. Both of these Pokemon are very good. But now, both of our contenders are going to be fighting Olivia, the fourth and final Elite Four member, whom uses Rock types. Keeping at Alolan Raichu, against the Relicanth, what I'm going to do is I have a Chesto Berry, so I can just set up a Calm Mind and I get hit with Yawn. I use this opportunity to set up another Calm Mind and immediately wake up. I'm now going to go into the rest of this fight with +2. On the Probopass, I start spamming Focus Blast, which was a really terrible idea. The thing has Sturdy, I should just be spamming Thunderbolt, plus Focus Blast likes to miss, which it did. Next up is the Lycanroc. I go for Thunderbolt and it didn't do enough, which was kind of surprising. But apparently the reason why is because the Sandstorm was up. Rock types get a special defense boost during a Sandstorm, and because of my poor play here, Alolan Raichu does get a reset. Olivia does take 3 tries in order to beat her. She was actually surprisingly difficult in this run, but after a little bit, we're able to defeat Olivia and move on to Professor Kukui. But before we go over that fight, we need to go back to Cantonian Raichu. The Cantonian Raichu will hold a Chesto Berry as well. What I'm going to do is go for 1 Charge Beam, get a special attack boost, and it faints. Okay, maybe the Chesto Berry was a waste of time. I guess it would have been good maybe in case of a miss, but it was very unnecessary. I do realize during this fight I should have had Focus Blast for the Probopass. Unfortunately, due to the fact I forgot, I do end up getting a reset to the Lycanroc due to not doing enough damage. On the second attempt, I'm going to go into the fight with an Electrium Z, and I'm going to use Gigavolt Havoc on the Probopass. This was also a terrible idea. Why did I not just teach Focus Blast? Am I trying to bleed more time here? For some reason, I just keep trying to make this work. I keep just not wanting to teach Focus Blast, and after getting another reset because of it, I finally give in and teach the move. Here's the thing, I don't have Calm Mind or higher special attack like the Alolan version does. I can't just get away with doing that. I'm still going to have to use Charge Beam on the Relicanth and get +1 to my special attack. It takes me until 23 blackouts and 10 resets into the run to finally get the +1 and just sweep the whole rest of her team. And now, with all 4 of the Elite Four members for both contenders defeated, let's go take on Professor Kukui. Starting with Cantonian Raichu, I'm going to use Thunderbolt, Hidden Power, Charge Beam, and Focus Blast with the Phytinium Z. Right away, I go for a Charge Beam and I get a special attack boost. Thankfully, I do outspeed everything on this team. And I do end up missing a Charge Beam, but thankfully he missed as well. Next up is the Snorlax. I go for All Out Plummeting. The reason I needed extra special attack was because All Out Plummeting was going to be a special move. And obviously, Snorlax does not like getting hit with special moves because it is very defensive with them. But it's fine though. After that, the rest of his Pokemon are very easy to take down with a mix of Thunderbolt and Focus Blast. On the Magnezone, it tried to use Thunderbolt on me, but Lightning Rod activates. I can finish it from there and clock in, with a real time of 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 6 seconds, with 23 blackouts, 10 resets at level 72, with a game time after the credits of 9 hours and 1 second. Hey, almost sub 9 hours, that's pretty good. Going back to the Alolan Raichu, I have Thunderbolt, Calm Mind, Psyshock, Focus Blast, and the Phytinium Z. I'm going to use 1 Calm Mind and Focus Blast on the Lycanroc. Next up is the Snorlax. I use All Out Plummeting on it. So yeah, you can definitely tell our movesets are pretty similar here. Next up is the Incineroar third. I have to use Focus Blast here, Thunderbolt won't cut it. Then after that comes the Ninetales. I switch on over to Thunderbolt and it actually survives. Okay, I probably should have used Psyshock, and I was correct on that. As soon as I went for Psyshock, it was actually a one hit. Then the Braviary goes down to Thunderbolt, and then on the Magnezone, I go for 1 Psyshock, hoping to finish it off the next turn. But unfortunately, because of my misplay against the Ninetales, I do get 1 final reset. Scratch that though, I do get a couple more resets because of Focus Blast misses. And the next time I'm able to make it to the Magnezone, you know what happens? Mirror Coat. The problem is, I'm only going to use special moves, and it knows that. So it's just going to want to spam Mirror Coat on me, which is actually kind of a big problem. And as I keep getting more and more resets to this fight, I am slowly losing my lead against the Cantonian Raichu. I am still ahead, mind you, when I'm at 9 blackouts and 9 resets, but if this continues, there is a small chance Cantonian Raichu might end up being the true winner after all. It also doesn't help that Focus Blast is very inaccurate and I only have 5 power points to the move. I probably should have used the PP Max, but I don't think that would have helped the misses. At 12 resets into the run, when I make it back to the Magnezone again, I go for Thunderbolt, and it actually uses its own Thunderbolt instead of going for stupid Mirror Coat. And thanks to that, Alolan Raichu is able to clock in, albeit with a lot of resets to this fight, with a real time of 2 hours, 16 minutes, and 41 seconds, with 12 resets, 9 blackouts at level 71, with a game time after the credits of 8 hours and 51 minutes. Hey, sub 9 hours with this one. Even though Alolan Raichu kept up such a pretty impressive lead compared to the Cantonian Raichu, it lost quite a bit of that lead during the final 8 trainer section, simply just because the Professor Kukui fight ended up being way harder than I originally thought. Honestly, I kinda blame this to the fact that I had way worse luck with Focus Blast, and granted, I do get a reset there that was my fault because of me not using Psyshock for the Alolan Ninetales, but I had plenty of resets against the Lycanroc and the Incineroar simply just because of me missing Focus Blast. But despite all that, Alolan Raichu was able to keep up a very small lead and still win. But both of these Pokemon, at the end of the day, are still very good. If we take a look at the tier list, both of these Pokemon are getting the S tier. They're going to be right next to each other. Also, at the very end of the S tier, it was not able to outperform the ranks of Solgaleo and Mewtwo, but they both still held up pretty well good. Even if they got an extra couple minutes worth of resets near the end, it still would have been S tier. The leaderboard actually tells a pretty interesting story. Even though Alolan Raichu, for example, had a game time very similar to some of these legendaries, the fact that it needed a higher level than them was one of the biggest reasons that it wasn't able to beat those Pokemon. Granted, it was also because of bad luck with Focus Blast, but that's just how Focus Blast works. You live and die by it. There's just really nothing you can do sometimes. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed this one. Next week, we're going to be playing some other interesting Pokemon. We're going to be playing with the Sandslashes. We're going to be playing with Cantonian Sandslash versus Alolan Sandslash. These two are going to be pretty dang rough. I know we had ourselves a nice little break today with some good Pokemon, but we're going to have to go right on back to the bad ones. But oh well, hope y'all enjoy either way. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.